Luca and his family relocated to a cabin nestled in the forest. He was a wilderness enthusiast and wanted his children to develop a love for nature, just as he had. The home was situated fairly remotely, with the nearest dwelling at least a 10-minute drive away. Andrea, Luca's spouse, was initially hesitant about settling so far from the town's bustle, but eventually warmed to the idea. The early days in their new home were idyllic, but soon the wild elements of their surroundings started to encroach a little too close for comfort. The main concern was a black bear. For 2 consecutive mornings, Luca discovered a large black bear lounging on their porch. The creature seemed familiar with its surroundings, as evidenced by the undisturbed state of their outdoor furnishings. Luca was the only family member who had encountered the bear, thanks to his early riser tendencies. He grappled with the decision to inform his family, half worried that Andrea might use the bear issue to advocate for a return to town. The bear sparked curiosity in him as well. It had a peculiar habit of raising a paw and waving whenever it locked eyes with him. Luca knew that bears were common inhabitants of these woods. He had been informed that they occasionally ventured toward residences, lured by enticing food aromas. Nevertheless, he maintained faith in the security of their house. The reinforced glass doors opening onto their porch were designed to withstand wildlife encounters. If the bear had any intentions of intruding, its efforts would likely be thwarted. All windows and doors were built with security and prevention of animal incursions in mind. As long as the family stayed inside, there was no imminent danger. Luca believed the bear's frequent visits were not driven by a quest for food. They were careful not to prepare any meals that could produce strong odors and attract wildlife. Therefore, he concluded that the bear must be motivated by something else. He resolved to observe the bear more closely if it made another appearance. Luca noticed a pattern in the bear's actions. Whenever it saw him, it would wave its paw from the deck, dismount, and look up at him from the ground. The next morning, determined to scrutinize the bear's behavior, Luca rose even earlier than usual. Sipping a cup of coffee, he watched patiently by the glass doors. Before long, he spotted the black bear stealthily making its way onto their porch. The bear noticed him immediately and predictably raised its paw in a wave. Luca reciprocated the gesture. In keeping with its routine, the bear sprang off the deck. Upon touching the ground, it waved again at Luca and took a few paces toward the forest, pausing to wave once more. Luca realized that the bear's gestures were not simple greetings. They seemed to be inviting him to follow. Luca faced a dilemma. He knew that if he ventured into the woods behind the bear, Andrea would be furious, assuming the bear wouldn't harm him first. It seemed like a foolhardy idea, but it was the only way to uncover the truth. In haste, Luca penned a quick note explaining he had gone for a trail walk and would return by evening. Peering out onto the patio, he saw the bear patiently waiting. Luca swiftly exited through the back door, securing it behind him. Although he loved wild animals, he had never been this close to one. The moment the sizable black bear noticed Luca approaching, it ambled toward the forest, occasionally looking back as if to ensure he was following. The bear's regular check-ins were intriguing. It was obvious the bear wanted him to follow. Incredulity filled Luca as he realized he was engaging in such a risky act, even as his curiosity about what the bear needed from him grew. He had never heard of black bears behaving this way. Perhaps this one needed assistance and had observed human capabilities. He had heard stories of animals soliciting help, but usually those involved tamer species. But what did he truly know? There was a chance the bear was coaxing him deep into the forest, planning to turn on him once he was far from any assistance. Yet the further he followed, the more assured he became that it didn't want to harm him. If the bear meant to attack, it would have done so by now. It had no reason to delay this long if Luca was its intended prey. After nearly an hour of walking, the bear finally halted. Luca assumed his family was alert by now and had probably discovered he was missing. However, they wouldn't be overly concerned, as he had left a note about his hike. When the black bear suddenly froze, Luca also stopped. The bear glanced at him, anticipating his reaction. Looking around, Luca tried to discern the purpose of the bear's actions, but saw nothing unusual. The bear began sniffing the ground furiously, appearing to search for something lost and seeming distressed. This filled Luca with dread. He speculated that this was the location the bear wanted him to witness, but whatever was here seemed to have vanished. As the ebony-colored bear began to snuffle around angrily, thoughts of a cautious departure crossed Luca's mind. Interacting with an irate bear wasn't on his to-do list. Nevertheless, as he cautiously moved backward, the bear swiftly pivoted toward him, baring its teeth. It was evident the bear wasn't pleased with Luca's attempt to slip away. Not in the mood for a confrontation, Luca froze. Doubts began to creep in about this risky predicament. He knew that if he managed to get home safely but revealed the truth to Andrea, she would never stop teasing him. Unexpectedly, the bear rose to its full height, its gaze intensely focused on something off in the distance. It had detected a scent. Immediately, the bear bolted off, following the scent trail. Luca remained rooted to the spot, a dilemma forming in his mind. Should he tail the bear or slip away silently toward home? What had caught the bear's attention seemed more exciting than him, as it didn't even spare a backward glance to see whether Luca was still around. Despite his fears, Luca felt strongly that he shouldn't abandon the bear. The bear paused, looked back, and motioned for Luca to follow with a gentle wave. Assured that Luca was trailing him, the bear resumed its journey. Its actions were clear. It wanted Luca's company on this quest. This exchange cemented Luca's decision to tag along. However, the bear seemed more hastened now, causing Luca to break into a jog to maintain pace. An air of urgency around the bear piqued Luca's curiosity. Surprisingly, the bear brought Luca to a well-trodden path. It was a section of the woods that had been cleared previously. He was led to an area displaying unmistakable signs of human disruption, litter-strewn ground and felled trees. In the distance, the outline of a wooden cabin took shape among the foliage. This was his closest neighbor, a man with whom he had numerous conversations before settling in the area. As they drew closer, Luca noted an uncanny silence and absence of his neighbor. The bear guided him to the garage, where it let out a thunderous roar and rammed against the garage door. The neighbor's startled voice echoed from inside, inquiring about the commotion. After identifying himself as Luca, silence followed. The bear persisted, relentlessly hitting the garage door. Then from within, Luca caught a muffled sound of a non-human origin. The sound stirred the bear into heightened aggression. The garage door began to buckle under the bear's relentless assaults. The ebony-furred bear was noticeably furious. After a moment, the neighbor raised his garage door, allowing Luca an unobstructed view as he stealthily exited through his back door, shutting it securely behind him. With no hesitation, the bear pushed its way into the garage, its roars echoing through the space. There, on the garage floor, lay a bear cub. Its condition seemed dire as it breathed erratically. At this point, Luca made the connection. The black bear must be this cub's parent. But how did the cub end up in his neighbor's garage? His neighbor cracked open a window to facilitate communication. He recounted to Luca how he stumbled upon the cub during a mountain trek. Mistaking it for abandoned, he took it back with the intention of handing it over to a veterinarian. He thought it was the right call, given the cub's fragile state in nature's raw wild. The mother bear, perhaps, shared the same sentiments, and maybe that was what brought her to Luca's property in pursuit of assistance. But it was clear that such help needed to come from an expert. His neighbor informed Luca that the veterinarian was on the way. They needed to promptly address the matter of the mother bear. The neighbor utilized his tranquilizer gun and took a shot at the mother bear. The bear attempted to resist but eventually succumbed to the tranquilizer's effects, collapsing into a deep slumber. Shortly after, the veterinarian picked up both the mother and the cub. The mother bear was headed to a temporary holding center, and the cub was to be treated nearby. The plan was to reintroduce them to the wilderness once the cub regained its health. Approximately 10 days later, they received a call from the vet. He was curious if Luca and the neighbor would be interested in witnessing the reintroduction process. The neighbor obliged, and he, along with Luca, joined the veterinarian and his crew in a clearing deep within the woods. The vet described the process as a reunion, given the separation the two bears had endured since their capture. As the duo was released, they charged toward each other, indulging in play and nuzzling amidst the grass. Watching them recede into the distance, Luca could hardly suppress his grin. When the mother bear paused, glanced back, and lifted her paw as if bidding goodbye, Luca and his family felt reassured that they would occasionally spot the two bears again, and were thrilled to witness their revitalized health and joy, a stark contrast to their earlier state. The mother bear discontinued her visits to their deck. Years later, a man had a chance encounter with a sobbing she-bear during his forest excursion. She tentatively drew closer, pleading with him for her cub's rescue. What predicament did the mama bear and her little one face? Would the individual risk his life to aid the bear? Things have happened many years later. You won't be able to guess this story's conclusion. Robert and his spouse reside in the suburbs encircled by mountains. There is a vast woodland at the base of the mountain, and Robert's residence is near the forest's edge. He is fond of this setting, and his wife is equally smitten with the fresh air of nature, so they often spend their weekends trekking in the woods. Regardless of the weather conditions, nothing dampens their spirits. Robert is a fervent devotee of animals. Whenever he ventures into the forest, he meticulously plans his course. Years of exploration have allowed him to encounter various animals frequently. He records everything related to animals, such as their common habitats, physical attributes, and behavioral patterns, continuously broadening his understanding. After several years, he has metamorphosed into an amateur animal connoisseur. Documenting wildlife in the area has become his favorite pastime. On a fine spring morning, Robert resumed his quest for exploration. He stepped into the forest brimming with anticipation, as spring is the prime season for animal activity, and he was thrilled about encountering fascinating wildlife. He proceeded along the predetermined trail, gradually venturing deeper into the woods. Suddenly a cry caught his attention, and he paused to listen. The distressing cry was unfamiliar to him, so Robert wasn't certain about the source. Regardless of the imminent risk, he remained collected and moved toward the sound. The appeals grew more desperate, slowly turning into wails. Although the cries appeared to come from a nearby area, Robert had to walk for about half an hour to discover the origin. When he finally had a clear view of the animal, he was taken aback, not expecting what he saw. A massive brown bear was aimlessly wandering around a bush, crying out sorrowfully. Robert, while hidden behind a massive tree, found it hard to believe his encounter with a bear. He dared not let his guard down, even refraining from making any movements. With the dominant predator in sight, he realized his predicament. Despite Robert's silence, the bear became aware of his presence. An involuntary shiver ran down Robert's spine as he readied himself for an imminent attack from the bear. Nevertheless, he picked up on something peculiar. The bear seemed totally unconcerned by the human presence, just giving Robert a quick once-over, sniffing his surroundings before sauntering back to the thicket. Such disinterest toward potential prey was exceedingly uncharacteristic for the most lethal predator. Robert mustered the courage to inch closer to the bear, attempting to comprehend its odd behavior. Only then did he spot the two bear cubs, hidden by the mother bear. The sight of the man filled the cubs with terror, and their distress only added to Robert's confusion. Clearly, this was a mother bear with her cubs. Normally, any female animal would instantly pounce upon any potential foe lurking close by. But why did this bear not react to him? The truth finally dawned upon Robert after closer observation of the whimpering sow bear. Lying just beyond the girth of the large bear, he could see a sizable hole. It needed a keen eye to spot such a hidden pit in the dense bushes. An inkling of what might have occurred popped into Robert's mind, but he needed to get a proper look to be sure. He made the bravest decision of his life to crawl toward the mother bear, making every effort not to come across as threatening. The sow seemed to accept his cautious approach. Peering down the hole, Robert unraveled the bear's secret. Nestled at the bottom of the deep yawning pit, he found another cub. He realized that the mother bear's constant sobbing and her surprising tolerance were all due to her concern for this little one. Robert couldn't determine how long the cub had been trapped in the pit. Its lifeless appearance and the mother bear's heart-wrenching cries indicated that the cub was in danger. Overwhelmed with emotion, Robert's next idea made him feel uneasy, but he was resolved to rescue the tiny bear. He hoped the concerned mother would understand his intentions. Robert jumped into action instantly. Digging into his toolkit, he retrieved a rope and some spikes. He fastened a spike firmly into the ground at the edge of the pit and knotted the rope around it, lowering the other end into the pit. Keeping his anxiety at bay, he rappelled down, gingerly picked up the feeble cub, hoisted it over his shoulder, and began his upward climb by clutching onto the rope. Making the journey was a difficult endeavor, and the rope seemed untrustworthy, but ultimately Robert succeeded in reaching the peak. The mother bear maintained an admirable serenity during the rescue, putting her faith in the man to save her youngster. Once Robert had grappled his way up with difficulty, he gently returned the cub to its mother and stepped back a safe distance. The mother bear tenderly received her cub, shot a grateful look toward Robert, and carried her baby off into the forest for safety. Robert felt a sense of deep satisfaction knowing he'd managed to save the infant bear. It filled him with pride to have had such a unique interaction with a creature so wonderfully elusive. However, chances of seeing them again seemed unlikely. Little did Robert know, his connection with these bears was far from over. 4 autumns later, Robert unknowingly found himself in the same location of his brave rescue while on his customary forest walk. Despite the passing years, he hadn't seen the bears a single time. As he found himself lost in thoughts of the past, he failed to notice another presence quietly trailing him. A lion, stalking its prey, waited for the opportune moment to strike. Still blissfully unaware, Robert continued to wander without realizing the lurking hazard. Suddenly, the lion lunged, knocking Robert to the ground before he even had a chance to comprehend what was happening. His heart hammered in his chest as he found himself pinned, unable to move. Escape was impossible, so all he could do was call out in the hopes of drawing the attention of nearby hunters. However, his efforts felt futile. The lion was already preparing to strike, its mouth gaping wide. Resigned, Robert shut his eyes, waiting for the end. But what happened next was far from what he'd expected. An imposing figure emerged from the thicket, dealing a powerful blow to the threatening lion. The terrified lion let out a yelp of pain and retreated. Regaining his footing, Robert looked up to see the bear he'd met 4 years ago, the same bear that had just scared off the lion. Their eyes met, and Robert instantly made the connection. After assuring that Robert wasn't hurt, the bear slowly lumbered off, leaving Robert in tears of relief. This incredible experience was an apparent consequence of the kindness Robert had shown a few years back. The mother bear seemed to have remembered her savior, and when the opportunity arose, she had repaid the debt by rescuing him.